wonder, just curious where everybody joins us from. So if you could just type your location in the chat, would be really interesting to see from which countries do we have people. Nice, cool. Wow, that's truly multinational. So we've got people from Lebanon and South Africa and Estonia. Great, great. So we got more people joining us. Okay, cool. So while everybody else is joining, I'll just start my talk today. Thanks a lot for the intro, Chazway. Just a couple of words about myself. As Chazway mentioned, I am a design manager at Alex. Alex is a Ukrainian company. We have offices all over the world, in the US, in Europe, and I'm currently based in our London office in the UK. So my current focus is on design management and facilitation, and I'm currently playing a role of head of UX for a design team of 5 designers for one of our B2B customers. And also I'm a design manager, like a competence manager in-house at Alex. So today's topic is one of my favorite topics. We'll talk about facilitation of complex stakeholder groups and generally about facilitation of workshops for big and diverse groups. So today we're going to talk about several topics. The first topic will be how to plan the productive dynamics of the workshop. Also how to choose participants. And then we'll see a couple of complex stakeholder cases. We'll just go one by one and consider what could be the risks and how we can mitigate them. And in the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So during the Q&A session, you can ask all the questions you have regarding the talk or just some cases that you had in the past. So this will be the time for discussion. And just to make this topic accessible for everyone, I'll be kind of verbalizing all the pictures that I have in my slides. So I'll be just describing what's going on the slide, and this will provide more meaning. And I would like to start with a question just to understand the audience interest in this subject. What is most difficult for you about facilitation, about stakeholder management? If you could just type in the chat, and it would help me to understand how to, to guide our discussion. Just a couple of words about your most challenging parts of stakeholder management and workshops based on your experience. Okay, so we've keep getting some answers. Managing conflicting expectations from stakeholders. Thank you. The workshop onboarding. Okay, great. Activities to get the most out of the session. Managing egos. Okay, great, great. All very challenging topics. We're going to touch upon some of them today. And actually, I wanted to mention that this topic of workshop facilitation is actually quite huge. So today we'll touch upon mostly on facilitation aspects, but later on, maybe we will have more sessions regarding the practical aspects, such as how to structure your board, how to choose exercises, etc. So I think we're very well primed by these challenges right now. And let me just start with a small intro and just a bit of a thought. Why do we have to do workshops in general? Why not run a meeting? So in which cases do you need to facilitate a workshop? Mostly it's about complex situations where you have to align diverse points of view, or you have to actively engage stakeholders into decision-making and decision-making as something where you have to make decisions about complex subjects where people are in disagreement. Also to get commitment and ownership over decisions, because in a workshop, people as you can see on the picture on the right, people are all actively engaged, and they roll their sleeves. They all get hands-on on the topic, and as a result, they get more commitment. So the workshop provides a shared ownership of the results of this workshop. Hence, people are more motivated to implement them rather than just listen to someone telling something during the meeting. And also to generate a variety of diverse ideas, quality ideas. So the workshop is a great exercise to brainstorm, to hear different opinions, and to get everything on the table. So on the picture here, there is a clay workshop where, you know, like everybody gets dirty, but as a result, everybody gets collaborative and creative. So the first part of facilitation is planning. So this is how you need to start when you know that there is a workshop coming up. And I just wanted to share this chart or this graph of the workshop dynamics. It's a most widespread scheme. It's not always going like this, but it's an optimal scheme, and it's based on double diamond and design thinking. It actually shows that the workshop goes through several phases, and all these phases are according to the double diamond. They start with divergent thinking. So divergent thinking is where you have the maximum variety of ideas. So as you can see here, people start with a small number of known ideas and some information that everybody is aligned with, and then these ideas, they become more and more diverse. So here in the middle, we start getting ideas which are polar, which are conflicting, as some of you has mentioned. And this is where this zone in the middle between divergent and convergent thinking is called the turbulent zone. So after this divergence, our aim is to converge, meaning to reduce the number of ideas and to find general patterns in these ideas. So basically, structure this chaos, structure this variety into something that people have consensus about. So this is where the majority of the group or the entire group agrees upon something, and these become the decisions, the results of the workshop in the end. So in this turbulent zone, actually, this is the place where most facilitators stumble upon, because in this zone, it's very easy to give up, as sometimes the debate becomes really hot and people start disagreeing with each other. They are very subject to bias in this zone. So once you get over this period, basically it leads to a very productive ending of the workshop. So the main goal is not to give up and just to handle these dynamics and keep pointing people to the reasons, to the purpose of the entire exercise. And if we look at the linear structure, like linear dynamics of the workshop, it starts with an intro, then we have the warm-up. This I'm going to cover in more detail later on. Then we have some individual work. And then after this individual work, there is a group discussion, right? So during the individual work, people in a remote setting or in a physical setting, they write something on their individual cards or pieces of paper in their boards, in their workspaces. And then when this phase is over, they bring it to the common table. So this is where we are looking for themes, we are sorting these ideas into groups. This is where we do affinity mapping. And then as a result of this diverge phase, we reduce the number of ideas, then we make decisions, and then, and it's very important, we finalize the workshop with the next steps discussion. So this is something that many teams actually skip or have no motivation to do or have no time to do because the agenda was quite intense. But this is very important because the next steps is what converts the workshop into real action. And this is what the purpose of the workshop was, basically. So you gathered all there to decide upon something and then to start implementing it as a group or individually. And then if we talk a little bit about the facilitator's role, it's actually quite a broad number of skills and mindsets that the facilitator needs to have. And to summarize it, first of all, facilitator's role is to build rapport with the participants. On the picture here, you can see two people having a conversation with a visible rapport, which is clear by the way they are mirroring each other physically. So they are looking at each other, their arms are mirrored, their legs are in the same position, and it indicates that they have a nice smooth flow of ideas between each other. So there are no disruptions in this channel, and this is this is actually a prerequisite of a nice dynamics in a group as well, not just between two people, but in a group. So this is what teachers are worrying about when they start with the class. To build rapport, you need to build mutual trust, you need to build empathy and the common ground. And once you have the rapport with the group, then you can be more or less sure that the workshop is not disrupted, and you have this let's say exchange of ideas in a very smooth and clear way. So what else a facilitator does during the workshop? They practice active listening, meaning they are acknowledging that they hear the participants, that they are heard and seen, and that their opinions are valued. Also, it's important to use visual explanations. So sometimes a text is too long to read. So if you can accompany your slide with a visual tooltips and explain information in many ways for people who learn in different ways. And very importantly, to check whether they have understood your explanations before immersing into an exercise, to check each time if the task is understood, if everything is clear for everyone and nobody is left out. One important point to mention is that the facilitator shouldn't be, if it's possible, combining facilitation with participation. And of course, it's not always possible, especially in in groups which have small budget for such kind of activities, maybe in a startup environment. But generally, it's quite difficult to combine facilitation with participation, and it may lead to one of the sides suffering. So basically, either your facilitation will suffer or your participation will not be as rich as it could be. Avoid bias. So we're all impacted by the biases. Basically, us and the stakeholders are all human beings, and most widespread biases during the workshop include some such as confirmation bias, for example. So if the stakeholders are, if they have the confirmation bias, it means that most probably they will seek out information which confirms their previous beliefs, and it actually prevents from new ideas to come into the workshop setting. Another bias is, for example, the anchoring bias. So this is where people are not evaluating something based on its pure value, but rather comparing things. Or, for example, a sunk lost fallacy bias. So this is when people are more motivated to avoid costs rather than gain something. And this also prevents some of the creativity and some of the blue sky thinking in the workshop. So you need to keep all these biases in check, including your own, of course, as well as criticism. Criticism is not, it shouldn't have a place in the workshop, especially in the brainstorming phase. If something needs to be critiqued, there should be a dedicated exercise for that. There should be some criteria for evaluation of ideas, but of course, no place for just non-constructive criticism. Another skill that facilitators need to have is ability to improvise based on their experience. So it's not always possible to orchestrate every single thing in a workshop. Moreover, most often it's not possible at all. So you have a plan, but then something goes off the plan and you have to improvise. And basically, you have to be prepared for that. At least rehearse if you're quite early in facilitation. So you have to be prepared that things will go off the schedule. One of the practical points is to know how to pronounce participants' names, check the pronunciation in advance, and be prepared because in the workshop setting, it will be quite difficult to switch between Google, and when you have to call out someone, when you have to ask them directly, it will be really handy to know their name pronunciation in advance. So talking about the first warm-up phase of the workshops and talking about engaging participants. So as one of you mentioned, it's quite challenging sometimes to start the workshop, to onboard everyone. And this is also related to a topic of keeping everyone involved and active and engaged. And this is where warm-up exercises, icebreakers come into play, where they are very useful. There is a variety of warm-up exercises. Some of them are quite informal. Some of them are more formal and appropriate for corporate workshops. So on the right, I'm showing a picture of an icebreaker called check-in. This is actually quite convenient for very different groups of stakeholders. So the participants have to basically answer two questions. What do I expect from this workshop? And also some interesting facts about my job or background. And here people can go as informal as they want to. They can mention their professional background, or they can talk about themselves and their hobbies. And it actually helps to create a warm atmosphere and to warm up the dynamics and to build this rapport that I mentioned. It's also quite important to engage your champion, so-called champion from the customer side, or maybe not from the customer side, maybe just your champion who helped you to start this workshop, to organize this workshop in the first place, maybe somebody who asked you to run it, someone who's on your side and supporting your interests. So obviously this person will be very helpful at the beginning to join the warm-up, join the introduction, and explain the purpose of the workshop together with you, especially if the stakeholders invited, if you see them for the first time, if it's a new group, and you have to be in a strong position in that group. So another example of a workshop on the right is it's called the world map. So basically here, every participant has to take a star and place it next to their native city. And it really works well with distributed teams. It doesn't work so well with teams who are all located in one city, but it's a nice way to for the people to get to know each other and understand a little bit about the background, about the time zone, about the situation. Also, it's good. Every icebreaker is good in a way that it keeps every single participant involved and activated. So it's not like a part of the group can just sit in a passive mode during the workshop. And this is where icebreakers come really helpful. a more informal way for groups who actually see each other not for the first time, but maybe it's a team. It's called show and tell. So for this exercise, every participant has to upload a photo of their workplace. If it's a remote workshop, they just share this photo, and then the rest of the group guesses who it belongs to. And there could be some other variations, not a workplace, but maybe they could include a sketch describing some part of their biography or a job, and then everybody has to guess who the sketch belongs to. So it's a really nice warm-up, and people are in a more collaborative mood after such an exercise. Another important topic, and it also happens before you plan your activities, before you plan your exercises, is the step of choosing the participants. So here you need to think who you need to invite, like who you absolutely must invite, and who is optional, and also which skills you need in that workshop, which competences. And then you need to check which of these participants are actually able to join, which of them are interested, which of them are available. And while you're checking that, you also need to think for distributed teams, you need to think about the time zones. So on the picture, I'm showing this overlap between time zones. It's actually just a small time frame which is comfortable for all the participants from, let's say, San Francisco and Tokyo. And also, when you're thinking about who to invite, it's important to think about any conflicts of interest between these stakeholders, because it will impact your dynamics, and it may lead to some complex stakeholder management cases. So you can, knowing the parties participating and knowing their interests, you can predict whether there will be any friction during the exercises. And of course, you need to check what are the expectations of the stakeholders, what are the expectations of the results of your facilitation style, and generally, if they are in agreement that this workshop needs to happen, and if some of them don't think so, it may lead to some disruption of the exercises. And also talking about the number of participants. So a general rule here is that for complex topics, for topics with ambitious agendas, with ambitious and complicated exercises, it's better to go with smaller groups. Maybe sometimes it's better to break the workshop into two parts rather than get things really confused and messy with a lot of people and complicated subject. Basically, you can divide, if you need to create breakout groups in your workshop, you can divide people in different ways. The general rule is to have these breakout rooms, to keep them small, about 2 to 6 people, not to make them too large, because in a large group, not everyone is involved. People get blurred focus. Some of them just don't have time to participate. And also, while deciding on how to divide your group, you need to remember that after they do some exercises in groups, they have to present their results. And depending on how much time you have, you can select the number of groups. The more groups you have, the more time you will have for the share out at the end of these individual sessions. And now moving on to complex stakeholder cases. So this is where we have to consider why some things happen, why some situations do not turn out for the best for the facilitator. So one of the widespread cases is the influence of the so-called HIPPO, the highest paid person stakeholder, on the group opinions. So this is quite a popular scenario where we have a decision maker in the room, but you know that you have to select ideas and you have to drive the group to conclusions, not based on one person's opinion, but on a diverse mix of opinions. And the possible risks here can be that participants start guessing which answer is expected from them. So they start looking up to the authority figure and just trying to guess what they want to hear. As a result, some valuable input is lost. Some most shy participants, they just keep silent, and the results may get skewed. And possible solutions to this: how can you overcome this situation? First of all, of course, ground rules, which need to be set at the beginning of the workshop. So this comes before the warm-up, this comes at the very, very beginning, during the introduction, and partially even before the workshop in an email, where you explain the nature of this exercise. You explain that everybody has a voice here, and if you are going to vote, you can also mention that everybody will be voting, so you don't have to criticize, you just have to wait for your moment to evaluate ideas. There is also some functionality in some of modern tools supporting that. So, for example, Mural, which is one of the digital facilitation tools. So Mural has this private mode where you cannot see others' content. It's hidden from you unless the facilitator turns off the private mode. Which means that you just keep writing in an anonymous mode, and then if it's turned off, you can hover on the cards and see who was the author. So it's a nice little touch. As far as I know, it's currently only Mural. Miro doesn't have it, but maybe they will introduce it later. So this is an example of how to organize the board in a way that everybody provides their input. So, for example, here you can see the list of individual boards on the left, where everybody is writing their cards. And then on the right, you have the common board, the board where we move all these individual stickers for any subsequent analysis and sorting. Case number 2, it also happens quite often right now with diverse and distributed teams, when the workshop involves people whose native language is not English, or maybe it's a mix of groups of people who are speaking different languages. So the risks in this situation could be that some participants are not keeping up with the workshop's pace. So it's too fast for them, and they're just switching to passive mode. And especially if they're sitting together with other people in the room, they just move into the offline regime and keep discussing it in their native language. And as a result, you just keep losing people, and maybe they can get frustrated about not understanding what's going on. So how to overcome it? Again, in the intro, in the first section of the workshop, you need to spend more time to warm up, to get acquainted with the tool. You can send the instructions to the tool before the workshop, and then spend some time, half an hour to 20 minutes, to make sure that everyone knows how to use the cards. And one of the very convenient ways is to add translations and add some examples with translations. So as I will show you in this slide, on the left we had this instruction to Mira fully in Icelandic, so people could just get acquainted with some shortcuts in their native language. And then in the individual boards, under each English phrase, we had the translation, and people were quite happy that they didn't have to get embarrassed about not knowing some words. And another helpful practical tool is Google Translate app. So basically, when somebody is really struggling to write in English, they can write in their native language, and you can have two facilitators. One facilitator will be leading, while the other facilitator will be translating in the background and just kind of supporting this person so they don't get lost and they don't have to ask for their colleagues' help. You can just be there for them. And like I said, individual support, so just to write directly or call this person or write them in their private messages. Another case is when the workshop is focused on sensitive or challenging topics. So these could be some topics where people don't want to reveal information that could, in their opinion, could compromise them. And it's quite widespread in B2B space, where you have to do a workshop with employees of an organization, and this organization requested your services. They want to get some input from their people, but their people quite often don't want to share some nuances because maybe they are worried that it will somehow influence the assessment of their work performance, or maybe there were some sensitive situations in the past. And as a result, they can just keep saying that everything is fine, everything is okay. They can really keep their content and input very bland. As a result, the stakeholders who actually requested this workshop, they can get disappointed about workshops as methodology because they will get bland results, they won't get any new information, and they may blame you as a facilitator. So obviously, it's quite a complex and challenging case. If you know that it may be the case, you can foresee this risk and try and do some research before the workshop, run some interviews, maybe do a survey, an anonymous survey, so you have some input which people are not willing to say in a group. So in this case, individual work with these participants may help. Another trick, psychological trick you can use, you can ask them to tell about others' experience. You can ask them to tell how their colleague is doing that, without names, of course. They can use something like one of my friends, and this can remove the burden of sharing some sensitive information from them. And as I said, again, engage with participants individually, individual interviews, it really helps. So this is an example of a board where we had quite an extensive user research phase before doing the workshop. And the results of this phase we used during the 4-hour sessions. So in this way, we could actually offload a lot of intensity from the workshop itself and do it beforehand, even though, of course, it requires much more effort and it's longer. Another case is when one of the participants is trying to basically dominate the workshop, and this person is trying to be all over the place. Maybe they are trying to jump into every conversation, talking longer than the rest of the people. This is the only person who is heard in the workshop. And as a result, you don't get enough time for other people's opinions. So when you are thinking how to mitigate this risk, you need to think about the reasons why the person is doing it. Most often, it's because this particular stakeholder acts like an attention seeker in this situation. So maybe they really don't get enough attention, and then you have to provide this attention to them. You need to listen to them and just acknowledge that you've heard them, and record the input in the so-called parking lot. So the parking lot can be used if something is voiced out which is completely irrelevant or relevant in a distant way. So it's like a small board, and you can just record these thoughts there. And in this way, the person knows that they've been heard, but it's not included into the main flow, and it's not disrupting your main flow, your prepared flow. Of course, if it's not helping, then you really need to use the stricter agenda, and you need to move this debate outside the workshop. So all the tools right now have the timers, so you can actually prepare a very strict time-based plan for your workshop to make sure that nobody is occupying all the space. Even the share outs can be timed. You can provide 3, 4, 5 minutes per share out, and beyond that point, you know that you have to move on to the next participant. And the final case that I wanted to discuss today is the actual disruption of the workshop. This is when one of the participants, or even a group of participants, keep saying that we're only wasting time here. They are actually trying to get the workshop completely off the track, and it all may start with just small sprouts of skepticism, which is very contagious. So basically, once one person starts doubting the methodology, starts doubting the topic, you can get the entire group following this example. And as a result, you just don't get a chance to complete what you've planned. So in this case, it's really important to talk to this person privately, not in front of the entire group, and to avoid conflict by all means. You can just write them in private messages and try to solve this issue. Again, you need to think about reasons why they're doing it. Maybe they have some conflicting interests. Maybe they came with a specific agenda. Maybe they are pursuing something. And then it's a separate case, but most often it's, again, the person is playing an attention seeker in this particular situation, and you can try to provide this attention to them in a peaceful way. If somebody is really aggressive towards the goals of the workshop, then you can try and minimize this participants' involvement. Even if you can foresee this risk, you can try to make their presence optional. You can approach them and talk to them, maybe suggest that you send a follow-up with the results of the workshop, maybe not to waste their time, and just to try to find a way for them not to participate in something that they are so, let's say, so against of. And in this way, you will save a lot of time, you will save a lot of energy and collaboration during the exercise itself. So these are all the cases that I wanted to share. I really want to also spend some time answering your questions. So let me check some of the things you mentioned here. I think we've covered some of these questions, but right now is the time to ask any other, maybe discuss some cases you have. Feel free to switch on your audio or write in the chat. Either way is welcome, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Sure. Do we have a shy group this evening?
Yes, looks like the group is shy.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
So thank you for the presentation. It's very
Thank you.
awesome. And I want to ask about how you build the rapport for online workshop. So like for other participants, how would you build that rapport before the workshop?
Yes, thank you for this question. So basically, in the online format, it became quite challenging, and some rules really help. So one of the rules is to ask everyone to switch on their cameras and make it mandatory. And it's important to ask people to do it in advance, so they come prepared and they don't have an excuse that they are not in the right setting. When everybody has the video switched on, first of all, it's a nice hint for you. You can look at the cameras and you can see that if you know, the light flashes on somebody's face, probably this person needs to multitask and switch between tabs and between screens, which means that they are falling out of this report. And then you have to call out this person by the name. You have to contact them somehow directly or in a group. For example, you can ask, John, what's your opinion on this topic? And in this way, you can continue involving these people. But as I said, the main way to build this report is through warm-up exercises where everybody has to provide some input and get really either creative through sketches or through sharing some photos or information. It creates this online, you know, online group dynamics. Currently, there are not many means of doing it in any other way, but the video can help, and some small exercises, some small warm-ups can really help to do that.
Great, thank you. Can I have another question?
Yes, of course. Sure.
So what about like a more complex workshop, like design sprint, for example? If you have it for 5 days or so, when do you use like complex workshop in the product development? Did you use it before, or did you recommend using design sprint or such a workshop for a long period?
Sorry, couldn't catch the last phrase. Design sprint or what?
Would you recommend to use design sprint for product development or such a complex workshop for product development?
Yeah, so thank you. So basically, a design sprint is just a series of workshops. I guess you are talking about, you know, like phases where you have a number of exercises spread for several days. So in product development, you can really use a variety of tools based on your goals. You can do design sprints, and actually not always at the beginning, but even in the middle of the product development, you can run design sprints, or you can use other discovery workshops such as assumption smash, where you analyze what you need to learn and what you already know. You can do value proposition canvas. You can have a persona exercise. So it all depends on your current goal. Talking of design sprints, I usually use this method when there is some complex functionality, like a piece of functionality, a feature or a user flow that you have to work on. And then it's all about planning. So you plan 5 days in advance, or depends on the duration of your design sprint. And when you plan these multi-day workshops, you have to keep in mind that sometimes the timing will go off and you need to plan B. So if some of the exercises at the end of the workshop are not fitting into the time frame, you need to be prepared how you will improvise in that case. So one of the ways is to move part of the exercises into offline mode. even sometimes prioritization exercises. You can ask people to do something via survey, some small part of the workshop. They can do it offline and send the results. So you as a facilitator can prep these results for the next day. So basically, it's all about timing, about being flexible and planning in advance, going really strict with the agendas, and having this agenda for the entire week.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your insight.
No problem. Thank you for the question. Let me check the chat. No more questions here in the chat, so maybe somebody else wants to add. Okay, so Alpha is asking, if you see that a particular workshop is getting out of hand, when should you decide to stop and postpone it for a later date? So that's a good question. I guess it will really depend on the situation and how much more you can test the waters. I would think that the situation is getting really out of hand if I contacted some people directly and they are not, let's say, being collaborative. And then you can see that this situation is escalating, and you have to somehow wrap up what you have already done. You have to explain to the group that there is no consensus common at this point, and it's a smarter decision for everyone to just do a break and continue next time. Maybe even a break in between parts is a good way to try and balance it out. So you can do a break, and you can, during the break, you can talk to some people and you can collect some individual inputs. So basically, it will all really depend on the situation, and you will have to think on your feet and just use all the methods you have in your arsenal. Once you've used all the methods, then it's time to postpone it and to regroup.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Alpha. Okay, great. So thank you so much for coming today. Thanks a lot for your active participation, for your questions. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn if you have any more questions coming to you later on. And if that's all, then we can wrap up. Thanks so much, and over to Chazway.
Okay, Katya.